All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. So today I'm going to talk about the economic goal of price stability. But before I do that, just a quick introduction. My name is Kevin Woodcox. I'm with the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. And because I'm sure you've heard it before, but we all have to say it, the views herein are those of the author, myself, and they do not reflect the official position or thoughts, ideas, or goals of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond or the Federal Reserve System. All right, so we've done the bookkeeping, we can move ahead. So the first thing I want to do is, Alexa, cancel. Sorry. The joys of technology. So the first thing I want to do is kind of just think about yesterday. You guys learned a lot about monetary policy, and just like you would with your students on the day after, you kind of want to give you a pop quiz. I want you to think about and go back to what you learned, check your level of understanding, and make sure you're good to go. So we're going to take a quick 5-question quiz here. All right. So we will be using Slido. So let's go. So the very first question is on your screen. Go ahead and put in the correct answer. And because obviously you were here yesterday, you already know all you need to know to be successful and answer these questions.
Oh, we don't see the questions, and there's several people in the chat mentioning that all they see are the options A, B, C, and D, but no question is displayed.
That's exactly what they're supposed to see.
Okay.
So question one is question one. Just select the correct answer, A, B, C, or D. All right, let's go to the next question here. First, C, we got 37% of you thought it was C, 30% A, 26 B. It's only 6% of you got the correct answer is D. We'll need to practice question one again. Let's go ahead and go to the second question of our quiz. Give you just a moment to answer question 3. Guess they're coming a little out of order. Sorry about the technology. All right, let's see. Oh, looks like only 13% of you knew that A was the correct answer. So we'll have to work on question 3 as well. And let's do the very last question. Here's question 4. Good. You guys all paid attention at the end of yesterday. It looks good. And the final question here, number 5. Oh, must have been very, very end of the day. You're all just ready to log out and be done. Clearly, we weren't paying attention at the end of the day. All right. Well, you should have gotten these as your correct answers. That question 1 was D. Question 2 was A. Question 3 was C. Question 4 is B. And question 5 is D. So I guess the question is, why did we take a quiz? Especially a quiz with absolutely no questions. It's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if there's a method to my madness. I don't know. Let's find out. How did this quiz make you feel? Go ahead and type in how you felt about taking this quiz, especially when that first question came up. A lot of confused and a lot of frustrated. All right, that's definitely accurate. So the rationale for why we take a quiz like this is because we created an environment where you were not sure what was going on. You did not have a sense of stability. There was an environment where you didn't know the information you needed to be successful. And that's what this lesson's first underpinning is all about. It wants students to think about what a situation might be when they have to make a choice and they don't have all of the information available, that things have changed in a way that they don't expect, that they don't understand. And that's why we at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond created the goal, lesson, the economic goal of price stability. So the very first thing the students do is take this quiz. And you would do it for your students. You'd pass this out and you'd give them 2 minutes to take a quiz that they don't have questions for and they don't know the answers for. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be giving you grief. They're going to be annoyed because they don't know what's going on. All of us like a sense of understanding, a sense of grounding. We want to be able to move forward. Because price stability is a goal, obviously, of the Federal Reserve. We want students to understand that this mock exercise is all about how consumers might feel when we deal with unstable prices, when things change, when unexpected inflation affect our purchasing power. How would that roll through to savers, to borrowers, lenders? How would it affect your standard of living? These are things we want students to learn and be able to make decisions around. However, because it's unstable and we're not sure what's going on, it is a frustrating time. Much like many of us are dealing with right now in our current economy, prices are changing. Gas prices are up and they're down, they're back up again. That requires us to quickly and very fast make decisions about, do we go on a vacation? Do we stay home? Do we buy a new car? Do we sell our house? What do we do? All of these things are changing very rapidly in our economy. We want students to understand that they need to look for the cues that do exist. So this lesson takes about 60 minutes, includes a step-by-step guide, PowerPoints, discussion prompts, and assessments. We're going to go through a few of the activities through the lesson. Obviously, the lesson does have objectives and standards, as all good lessons should. So we want to obviously have students do some defining some key terms, explain how inflation affects their purchasing power, what inflation is and how you might be able to predict it and make decisions and feel the consequences of inflation's effects on us. Evaluate why price stability is an economic goal in the first place. And obviously, because we are the Federal Reserve, we are always aligning our resources to the national content standards. So these are also aligned to standards because we want to make sure you are teaching things that are valuable to students learning. And because the content standards nationally align well to state standards, they're very easy to translate to your own personal state's requirements. So the key concepts here, there are key terms that are important. We want your students to understand this, price stability, inflation, unexpected inflation. We want them to understand that there's also a thing called price instability at the same time. So we want them to understand that this all relates together, that price stability is related to inflation, and inflation's effect determines whether or not there will be price stability. And we want them to be able to understand the situations that will occur when inflation happens in unexpected or ways that aren't predicted. But along those lines, we also want students to think about the fact that goals do matter. All right, so we all have some professional goals, personal goals. Some are simple, some are complex. Some, require a lot of work. Some require just a little bit of work. Some days it feels like just getting out of bed as a goal, especially during the height of the pandemic. And there are other days where there's just so much going on, you don't realize what you are achieving. So one of the next activities we would do with your students is, after you kind of frazzle them up, did a brief introduction, you're going to give them this opportunity to basically ask what goals they have. Sorry, clicked the wrong way. So go ahead and just type down a personal goal that you have or a professional goal that you have. Buy a house, retire, better teacher. Well, you're here, so you're already achieving that one. Financial security, work-life balance. Learn Czech. It's a beautiful language. Very good. A lot of goals out there. Most of these goals are grounded in things that you personally want, things you desire. Most of these are generally attainable through time and effort, but also they require some level of measurement. Right? We have to know, how do we know we've achieved a goal? We have to set it against something. We have to have a standard. So within the Federal Reserve, we do the same thing. And we have two goals. Probably learned a little about this yesterday, so this hopefully is a quick review. But the Federal Reserve has two goals, so known as the dual mandate: maximum employment and stable prices. This is what Congress has told the Fed to do. Technically, they've told us to do three things, that lovely third one, moderate long-term interest rates, but we generally say that if we can achieve the first two, the third one just happens by itself. It's kind of a magic trick we have. So we want prices to be stable. We want people to be able to understand what's going on in the economy and be able to make good purchasing decisions. We don't want major swings. We also want high employment or low unemployment. Same thing, just depends on how your particular, either your textbook or you learned it, or in the system with the Federal Reserve, how your particular bank chooses to phrase that. So several banks like to say high employment, some like to say a very low stable unemployment rate. So different banks, different definition, same thing. We want maximum employment and stable prices. So I have a question for you, however. What are stable prices? What does that mean? Maximum employment could be 0% inflation. 0% people who want a job are unemployed. But what does stable prices mean? All right, I'm seeing a lot of things here. Wow, a lot of great answers. There are several of you that are very close to the correct answer, even though I think I would say all of these answers are very, very accurate. There's a very good one right there. So we'll go ahead and just our answer. So the Federal Open Market Committee has determined that stable inflation is low and at a rate of 2% per year as measured by the annual change of the price index for personal consumption expenditure. So the Fed prefers PCE, not PCI. I'm sure you're aware of that. And we want that 2% per year as an average. So a low unemployment rate, average 2% inflation per year is what we're looking for within the Federal Reserve. That's how we measure ourselves against Congress's goals. So just like you would measure your students against your rubric and critique them based on the content, we have this as our stated goal. This is our measure of success. So price stability is an economic goal because it's easier to make decisions with stable prices. When people don't know how the economy or prices will change, they cannot plan for the future. And that's what we really want people to be able to do, to make good economic choices. Now, one thing that we all have to realize, and obviously you do, but sometimes your students won't, is that these types of goals do not affect just one person. Price stability affects everyone including the consumers, businesses, as well as the government. They reduce overall economic progress, the standard of living, and make it difficult for everyone in the economy to achieve their goals. So it's important that the Fed does meet its mandate, does achieve its price stability goal so that they can be successful. But more importantly, it helps students understand that they have to make choices in difficult times that will be uncertain. So in the past few decades, most of your students' lives, honestly, we have a summer intern here in Richmond, and we were talking the other day, and I realized how young she was and how old I was, and that made me feel sad inside. But more importantly, it reinforced this theory that in her lifetime and most of your students' lifetime, they've really not had to deal with inflation. Prices have been relatively stable for a very long time. In fact, for many years, the Fed was under our 2% goal. As the bank president here in Richmond said, generally, if you just would look at it, we were just under, so round it up, we're there. So it's kind of that idea of being on an average. However, these were consistent and predictable rates of inflation that allowed businesses and consumers to form expectations. They knew and had an idea of what the economy was going to be going forward. They knew and felt like they were secure, so they could make rational economic decisions. That key term there is rational. But however, when things get complicated, when inflation changes, especially quickly or unexpectedly, we cannot make rational decisions. And as we said earlier, inflation has been above the FOMC's target. And with this unexpected inflation, it becomes difficult to make those decisions. So we lack that firm, comfortable foundation, and we want to be able to base our discussions and our thinking in how we are going to make our decisions. When inflation is unexpected and is rising, people see prices changing, they become nervous, confused, upset, annoyed, much like many of you did when you took a quiz where there were no questions and you didn't know what answer options were available. So when people don't know what the economy is going to do, they don't know what prices are doing, they can't plan for the future. They cannot make good choices. And because of that, that is not good for the entirety of the economy. So we want students to learn that there is a matter out there beyond just their personal economy, and more importantly, that there are relationships between inflation and their purchasing power and their long-term economic goals. So first thing I want to look at when we talk about those relationships is, what is the relationship that exists between inflation and purchasing power? So this is a question you would pose to your students, and I'm posing it to you right now. So what happens to your purchasing power when inflation increases? A lot of answers coming in here. A lot of people are saying it decreases, goes down. Sad decision. I like that, sad decisions. All right. So most of you said it would go down, and that is the general view of it. So if inflation goes down, the value of the dollar goes down. The value of the dollar goes down, your purchasing power goes down. So therefore, inflation rises, your purchasing power goes down. This is vitally simple, yet also kind of confusing, which is why we include this graphic. It's very straightforward, helps students to really see how this relationship works. So we want them to understand that their dollar is not going as far as it used to. So we have a little discussion about this, give perhaps some recommendations or suggestions, maybe tell a story about your own personal experiences, or even gauge from them some of the things that they're seeing or might have seen in an economy where, with inflation increasing, some of the things they bought might have changed. We then want to ask about a relationship between inflation and the value of their savings. So we'll do the same thing. So when there is inflation, what happens to the value of money you put in your savings over time? All right, say goodbye to retirement. I like that one in a sad way. All right, very good. So again, inflation increases, the value of the dollar goes down, therefore the value of your savings will decrease. So again, it's all about what you can buy with it so that those dollars are still worth less. So they can buy less things. So they can buy a less fancy car, they can buy a less expensive cell phone. They have to make less expensive choices if they're going to be forced into a situation where prices are increasing and the amount of money that they have doesn't change. All right, so inflation influences our ability to achieve our personal economic goals. So we really then pivot back to that question about the goals. We want the students to remember how it's important to achieve a goal, why goals matter. And we want them to start thinking about how their choices are affected by inflation and how goals are affected by inflation. So we're going to do an activity as a group where we're going to see how unexpected inflation might affect you depending on your economic circumstances. So in the real world, we would divide the class into 3 or 4 groups. We would distribute a coin to each group. We'd give a handout, I call the inflation flip score sheet. And basically what the students would do is they have a goal situation. They have to make a decision about that goal. So they're going to pick one of 2 options. They're then going to flip a coin. And that coin flip will be heads, obviously heads or tails. And that will determine whether prices rose or fell. So whether they experienced inflation or if prices stayed the same. So this helps students then make a choice, but then see the consequences of that decision if in a situation where unexpected inflation might come. You then lead into a discussion. So to do this, I need to quickly stop presenting 1 second, go to chat and drop in a lovely link for you all to see here as I go back and reshare my screen. Oops. All right. So that lovely little link takes you to the Google Coin Flipper. So since we are all virtual and I couldn't send you coins because sending money in the mail would get me in a lot of trouble with the Federal Reserve. So we're going to use that virtual coin flip. And I want you to just on your note sheet kind of just jot down your choice here. So your first goal, you want to buy a new gaming system that costs $300. You've already saved $200. So how do you achieve your goal? You must choose one of the following. You're going to save that last $100 to buy that gaming system in 6 months, or you're going to borrow the last $100 to get that system right now and then pay back a loan over the next 6 months with some interest. So you have to make a decision. Which of those 2 are you going to choose? Then, once you've made your choice, go ahead and use that coin flipper that I put in the chat. And you're then going to evaluate based on that whether or not you were successful or not. So were you, if you took that loan out and you got heads, which means there was unexpected inflation, you would give yourself 1 point. If you got tails, prices were stable, and you would give yourself 0 points. So prices were stable, everything is fine, you're good to go. If you chose to save that money and you flipped the coin and got heads, you would give yourself a negative point. However, if you got tails, you give yourself 0 points. So then we want to ask the question, were you hurt or helped because of inflation? Go ahead and respond now. Do you think you were hurt or helped because of what happened to inflation? All right, so looks like a lot of you were helped by the situation. So that creates the question that we have a situation in an economy where we're not sure what's going on. You may or may not be affected by it. So that's all we want students to understand, is that choices do matter and have consequences beyond the moment. So let's try this again. You have a second economic goal here. You want to go to college after you graduate from high school, and you determine that your yearly cost will be $8,000. I want to know where this school is. We wrote this lesson a few years ago when college prices, I guess, were a little more reasonable. So how do you achieve your goal? Choose one of the following. You're going to take out a student loan with a fixed rate, or you're going to take out a loan with a variable rate. You're going to pick one of those two. And again, you're going to flip that virtual coin, heads, which will tell us that prices have changed unexpectedly, or tails, that prices remain the same. So in this situation, that fixed rate loan, if you got heads with unexpected inflation, you gain a point. Everyone else, you would get no points. So were you helped or hurt by this inflation flip? So a lot of you were helped by this situation, which is very good. It means you experienced some unexpected inflation, but because you had that fixed rate loan, you were locked in, because we know that fixed rate loans do not change. So therefore, if inflation rises, the new rate that exists, say, on a variable loan would be higher. However, you're in a situation where your payment has stayed consistent. So that's a way you can also then take this discussion a little step further, talk about car loans, credit cards, housing. Anytime that interest rates do change, you can go back and reaffirm that connection between inflation and interest, and that relationship that occurs. All right, we're going to do a third decision here. So you need money for your homecoming. Your parents or guardians say they will pay you either a guaranteed $10 weekly allowance for helping around the house, or a couple of dollars each week for each chore that you just do. So you get to do as many chores as you want, and you'll get a couple of dollars for each chore. So that variable allowance, depending on how much you complete, or that guaranteed $10 a week allowance. Again, as you flip that coin, heads, prices have changed. Tails, prices have remained stable. Go ahead and make your choice and flip your coin. All right, so in this situation, if you took that guaranteed $10 weekly allowance and you got heads, you would lose a point, and everyone else would get 0 points, no matter what your decision was. So were you helped, hurt, or nothing really affected your decision? So a few people there took that guaranteed $10, it looks like. That lovely value of your earnings, that value of the money coming in being consistent. Prices have changed. You have been hurt by this unexpected inflation. Excellent. So we know that variable changes in price do affect consistent income. So this is a way to kind of go back to the point we're saying, you know, when you have consistent income, there can be a factor that affects it. So when there's unexpected inflation, the price increase will affect the value of your money, what you can spend it on. So therefore, your purchasing power is decreased. So again, going back to that earlier content, that earlier concept that you did teach, and it gives you that opportunity to get students to see that in real time. All right, the last economic goal we're going to look at today is number 4. So you need to ride to school every day. Your friend normally drives you. However, your friend blew out a tire and does not have enough money to replace it. So what do? Do you loan your friend the $100 at 10% interest for the next 12 months? So therefore, they can get their car fixed. Or do you just spend your $100 on yourself and just decide to ride the school bus? Again, heads will be that prices have changed, and tails will be prices have remained stable. Go ahead and flip your coin. So if you came up with heads, you would give yourself a negative point. If you came up for the loan, if you came up with heads for spend the money yourself, you would give yourself a positive point. And in this case, all of tails, prices are stable. So therefore, you would give yourself 0 points. All right, so the last question here about that. So were you helped or hurt? A lot of you were hurt, a lot of neithers, and only a few people were helped by the situation. So it really comes down to the fact that we know when unexpected inflation occurs and you gave your friend a loan, repaying that money over time means the money you're getting back is worth less than it was when you gave that money out. So because of that, we know that it therefore is worth less money in the future. So this kind of goes back to that concept that, you know, banks and institutions, they take a risk when they give fixed term loans, and why for a consumer, they're more valuable because there is that potential that if interest rates increases because prices have increased, those dollars that they're paying back are actually going to be worth more or less than they were at the time. So because of that, it's important for students to understand inflation has that value. You were helped mainly in the situation if you took that heads and spend the money on yourself for the same idea. That, you know, the cost of the goods and services you purchase today are likely lower than they would have been in that 6 to 12 months in the future. Because of that, you actually worked out into your benefit. We can see this in the economy, you know, as prices increase, because, you know, today it costs $4 for a gallon of gas in the city of Richmond. Tomorrow it could cost $5 for a gallon of gas in the city of Richmond. I should have bought that gallon of gas today. So that is a way for students to kind of understand how inflation does affect that, how unexpected changes in price affects the value of the money they have now and the value of the money they would have in the future. So we want students to remember that stable prices keep things neutral. So therefore, we want a situation where basically neither you nor your friend actually comes out ahead in the situation. You both achieve your primary goal is to get to school. Both choices get you that outcome. So therefore prices are stable. Now, the good friend would probably loan the money. However, you still receive economically the same benefit because your goal to achieve to get to school has been met. All right, so when we think about this activity, we then tell students, all right, score yourself up. If you got 3 points, you achieved a perfect score, you've met all your goals, you've done a great job. Your economic situation is really looking good right now. You got between 0 and 2 points, you did good. You achieved most of your goals. You mastered a lot of things. You achieved and were able to deal with changes in price, unexpected inflation, make strong and sound economic decisions. If you got less than 0 points, you did not achieve your goals. The unexpected inflation has hampered your ability to meet and achieve the decisions you sought to make. So you want you to make sure that students can understand that when prices change, people have to make rational decisions. However, again, with unstable prices, our incentives change, and therefore sometimes that leads us to long-term consequences because we can't make those rational decisions. So we normally would then move on to just other activities where we would talk about other forms of instability, such as how people on fixed incomes and savers are hurt by inflation, such as in decision 1. Then we could pull back and we'll say with decision 3 how neither person is helped because a fixed rate borrower comes out basically a little bit better than a variable rate borrower. So this is just a way to kind of come back and refer to the students and the activity, have a good, strong debrief, get their thoughts, have some probing questions, because let's be honest, we want them to think about the fact that it is usually a good idea to save for the future. We know that. However, incentives do change because of price stability. So sometimes being that saver might not be the best in the moment. However, when prices are increasing, interest rates are also increasing, so banks tend to pay a higher rate of interest on savings. Now, sometimes that rate of return is lower than what the inflation rate is, so you still don't really come out all that far ahead. But we want students to understand saving for the future is important. We also then want to take it a step further and say, okay, now that was you as a consumer, that was you as someone who's spending money. What does price stability and instability do for businesses? They might have to change their behaviors as well, just as you do. They might have to invest less, lay off or hire fewer workers. And because businesses changes their behaviors, that will additionally affect overall economic activity and the economy's progress towards its goals. So therefore, less growth for businesses and individuals, and therefore less success economically for everyone. So this lesson really is about making students understand how inflation affects them, as well as how it works through the entire economy and how everyone's economic goals are affected by unexpected inflation. So again, we really want students to understand throughout this lesson that, savers, those on fixed incomes, banks, borrowers, and consumers, and the overall economy are constantly affected by inflation. This lesson also includes a lovely quiz and some scenarios within that quiz that require short answers as well as multiple choice, because we want students to get that opportunity to have that probing, deep learning experience. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions in my remaining minute here.
Kevin, there's lots of comments in the chat about people wanting the lesson and people seeing the personal finance connections, and they really like the coin flip, and I'm seeing lots of accolades and people like it. I did share that link where they can get to your PowerPoint and to the lesson.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, it's a great lesson. I do want to also thank the whole of the San Francisco and Los Angeles and our friends in Cleveland for helping us, and of course Eva and everyone in Atlanta for letting us present today as well.